Morning, everybody. Welcome to Live Coffee Talk Show. I'm Michelle. I am a confident and leadership coach who work with negative self-talkers who get them feel more confident so that they can own in the room by letting go of fear of judgment. And I have today with me Bob Minhas.
Hello.
Hi, Bob. Bob Minhas is the authoritative figure to high-performing corporate and entrepreneurial leaders with his intense circle of expert value system to validate and clearly identify their vision and focus. He is the expert of the experts, and you will find out why. Positioning you to attract the opportunity naturally, and his combined coaching, business ownership, education, and life experience align him perfectly to the position you as the wanted expert in your field. I'm already excited. His book, From Addict to Expert, maps the journey of his early dysfunctional with business and people and his recovery to live from a place of authenticity. He will share his story as an inspiration, and he continues to do that, and engaging speakers to captivate his audience. Bob is a proud father of three future leaders. He balances his life, his need for stability with yoga and his humor. And he's a really funny guy. We were just on the show earlier and he started doing all kinds of things. And I'm going to ask him to do something. So for you in a minute. His humor with the 90s TV trivia and pop lyrics, it's going to make you laugh. If you haven't received one of his GIFs, those of you who's on Facebook, you probably have seen those in the past. And I just saw one that he was posting on his Facebook yesterday. It's hilarious. You gotta go follow him. You will not yet be in his inner circle if you haven't seen those. So go check him out. And please welcome Bob Minhas. Hi, Bob.
Thank you. Wow, that you made me feel valuable. That is the best reading of my bio I've ever had. Usually some hosts kind of just read it word for word, but you put some love into it. I appreciate it.
We were talking about, so we just jumped onto the call and Bob was showing me his, what was it called? The A dance?
Oh, the A, yeah. So I'm a huge fan of the Avengers, and there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And so Ant-Man has this dance when he gets ready for something. He just does like you have to see the full body look of it. And I'm like, I remember hearing, I think it was Cheryl Cuddy's TED Talk about power posing. And I was thinking, that to me is the ultimate power pose, just to show up into a room and do something. Yeah, just like get the blood flowing. so yeah, that I wasn't going to share publicly, but I'm happy to. There you go.
That's it. Because I think, especially for me, what I teach women is how do you ease up that, how do you let go of that feeling of butterfly in the stomach, right? So I teach them when they walk around, they walk with a tail. And I love what you just shared, because it really alleviates, it gets us back into our body, alleviate a lot of those anxiety and nervous feeling about going up to the stage and speak. So I love that.
I think more than just speaking, whether it's podcasting, but whenever we're publicly talking to people, a group of people, no matter the size, and that fear sets in or that insecurity sets in, I think biologically we have this tendency to shrink, right? So we're like, oh, I'm a little nervous. And our voice goes monotone and we don't do a lot of action. So what I love to do is, before I do any kind of event, speaking, podcast, whatever it is that I want to do, even before I do my group coaching, I love doing physical activities, because not as much as I love my work, I don't always wake up perfect, right? We all wake up with, maybe we've had a bad night or some anxieties have followed us through the evening. And the idea is, when I start my day, or when I tell anyone I know to start your day with something physical, that tends to get movement going. And although I'm not a biologist, Michelle, you'll read a lot of articles on how the science and biology shows that when you do movement, you're physically moving energy, you're physically moving particles within you, which tend to create a physical reaction, which is more positive, right? It's almost energy. And so when energy starts to move in us, it gives us that ability to harness it into something positive. So we weren't going to talk about that, but that's sort of one of my beliefs, right? Is just move wherever you can, whenever you're feeling stuck.
Okay, so now that we got the attention of our audience and we got
Yeah.
everyone moving,
Yeah, for
we
sure.
can jump into it, right? Now they're all, yeah, tell me more
Yeah.
about this.
Tell
I
me more.
want to know
Yeah,
more.
absolutely.
So when I read your bio, one of the things that caught my eye was the from addict to expert.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
So that's a book that I still need to get published. But so it's a book I wrote when my marriage ended about 7 years ago. I was in a really dark place, a tough place, and so out of me came this book about all of the things I thought I needed to change, and that was 7 years ago. And what's interesting is over the years, the reason why I'm not publishing it until now, over the years, the book kept evolving into, I was at one place in my life and I realized now that I've evolved to this place, I updated the book, and then I evolved to this place and I kept updating this book. And so I didn't even have a title until more recently working with my ghostwriter, really understanding what it was about. And when I read the previous iterations of the book 7 years ago, and when I read it now, chapter by chapter, it really is this idea of being this sort of addict that so many entrepreneurs, whether aspiring or those that are in it, really are. And we don't admit it. We assume addiction relates to drugs or alcohol or gambling. But within entrepreneurship, there is this addiction for constant success. And by that, I mean, I used to run for the highs of success. How can I make that big sale? How can I get people to say I was amazing? I would run for that validation, if you will. And I was so addicted to that rush, that dopamine drop of people say I'm good, people say I'm cool. The thing is in entrepreneurship is you can't really build a business around it. And so that's what I discovered is I was so addicted to all of these different forms of validation. And over that time included a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of smiling, a little bit of everything else. It's almost like an addictive personality that I realized I wasn't really actually offering value to people of my expertise. I was a showman, if you will. I was more of an entertainer. I was the clown that would come to networking events and make people laugh and entertain them. And then at the end of the day, I wasn't getting any referrals because nobody really knew what I did. Nobody really understood what my expertise was. And so over the years, especially the last 2-3 years, I've been cultivating this idea of how do you take your knowledge, your authority, your influence, all of those things that make you who you are in terms of what you know, and how do you sell that as opposed to just entertainment? And so it became, instead of being addicted to those highs, it was more about being the validated expert, where instead of me saying, Michelle like me, Michelle like me, Michelle like me, it was more you calling me and saying, Bob, I saw your video on this. I'd love to learn more, right? It's a complete shift to me, instead of me going out there chasing people, how do I showcase my expertise so people come to me? And the book is sort of an evolution of that. It's that experience of losing my marriage, becoming homeless, spending all this time couch surfing and falling into these different addictions and not, just not being the person I wanted to meet. What I should have summarized it by saying, Michelle, it was my journey of identity. It was losing my identity of who I was and becoming this new person I wanted to be, expert being part of it. That's the other key, Michelle, is when we make expertise our only identity, that's another big risk. Being an expert is really about being an expert is no longer about knowledge. In the old days, they would classify you as an expert because you knew everything about something. And as we've evolved, being an expert really means, can people relate to you? Can they trust you? There's this intermixture of the word authority, influence, just all of these different mixtures of words that make up expertise. But an expertise is who you are as a person. How do you lead these people? You don't have to know everything about a subject to be an expert. But if you know how to find the answer to that question, you're the expert, because you're leading by example, you're leading by authority. So that's really what the book's about, is that journey of who I was then and who I've become now. And I'm still evolving, but publishing it now is sort of a showcase of how I made that journey, not just in my personal changes in my personal life, but I talk in the book about business aspects as well to change.
I love what you said about experts, because I think a lot of us get really stuck on, especially when I first finished the coaching program, I felt, well, okay, so now what I do, it's like people hand you a lemon and they want you to make something out of it, right? But how do I do that? They taught me how to describe a lemon, but I don't know exactly how to relate to the lemon. Like, what does it have to do with me?
Or in our case, how do I make the lemon work for me? So they've given me a lemon. I know how to describe, draw. I know how to do everything with the lemon, but I don't know how to earn money with the lemon. So I see this, and when I talk about expertise, I don't just talk about coaches. I talk a lot about dentists, lawyers, doctors, chiro. They spend 5 extra years, if not more, learning their craft, right? Understanding how to deliver their expertise and understanding how to serve their clients and help people in their chosen trade. You will never, ever, ever find a class anywhere in those programs around entrepreneurship, right? Understanding how to now take that expertise and share it with others. They understand when someone's at their door, how to care for them with their expertise. They never learn how to use that expertise to attract people to their door. And that's what I'm all about. It's, talking to that chiro, talking to that accountant, talking to that lawyer and say, you know a lot of amazing stuff. And the gap is people know that you know stuff, but don't know what you know. And you don't know what they need to know. There's this huge gap. All expertise is filling in that gap. That's all I try and encourage people to do. And that's what I teach people. How do you fill that gap in getting people to understand not only what it is they need to know, but what it is that you can offer them, what it is that you can do. So it really is that idea of spending all this time on building education around one skill, like you said, the lemon, but not knowing how to actually action that lemon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to bring the picture back a little bit to your journey. I
Yeah.
think, going from point A to point B, what was that single moment where you wake up one day and you said, well, this is not working. How do I change it? Like, what was that moment like? Did you have one of those moments?
I get asked about that. What was my FTE event, right? This event, right? And what's interesting is I can't tell you there was one because A, I'm stubborn. And B, I think we all go through different iterations and variations of evolution. I can tell you certainly there came a point when I just got tired of never being able to care for my family. So I'm divorced. My ex-wife is now caring for my kids, but I still have to provide. I still need to make sure that they have the resources they need because, when we were married, I was the only breadwinner. So first of all, I got tired of that. I got tired of feeling that I was less than, right? I wanted to feel like I was actually producing some impact in the lives of my children. And that's why I say I'm raising 3 future leaders, is because I want them to always have that. So that was one moment. Another moment came, I had this amazing opportunity come up with a government agency, which put me in all of these small communities to really understand how to coach entrepreneurs that don't see themselves as entrepreneurs. They see themselves as business owners or self-employed. They don't define themselves as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So that really woke me to the idea that maybe the way I define the world isn't the only definition. So there was that. There was the idea that after spending years in that government world, realizing that this wasn't my only stop. I wanted to be able to do more and to deliver more, but I couldn't do it where I was. So there were so many different variations. It was all about identity. So I got tired of my identity as a loser that couldn't do anything. Then I got tired of the identity of I'm just a government drone. Then I got tired of the identity of what does Bob actually do? I just wanted to make sure that I etched out my piece of the world. And when I did that, I wanted that piece to not, and that was the other aha moment, was I didn't want it to be about me and my piece. I wanted to etch out a piece of the world. And how do I help deliver this idea of expertise, this idea of success and entrepreneurship and value to everybody in the world? So my most recent FTE was I created a vision statement. And I tell people to do this, but I never did it. I created a vision statement and a mission statement, and I have it on my wall. I'm pointing to it as if you could see it. But it really is, my vision became I commit to building entrepreneurs, which meant I wanted to help everybody in the world, every single person in the world, have entrepreneurship and expertise as a choice in their life. I never want to push people, Michelle. I never want to say to someone employed, you're an idiot, start a business. I always just want people to have a choice. If they've worked somewhere for 50 years, that's okay. But I want them to understand on every bad day, on every day they feel overwhelmed, on every day they want more to life, I want them to know they have a choice. They can choose entrepreneurship. They can choose to create expertise. They can choose, to create a package out of their expertise, to come to the world and share what it is their gift is. They can choose to do that. I want that in every single human being on earth. And that is what just catapulted me to where I am now. Every person I talk to, it's how can I help you understand that you have a choice, and how can I help you build that choice? My kids are the same. If they choose in life to get jobs and be fully employed, I'll never not love them. I'll always love them. but I always want to know that my succession, my KPI, my key performance indicator as a father is, have I given them the understanding and shown them that there's a whole other world that they have choice to reach.
That's so beautifully said. And
Yeah.
what I heard as you're describing it is you just keep evolving. And I love
Yes.
you use the word evolve when
Yeah.
earlier when you were telling your story. It's all about evolving from one form, one stage to the next,
Yes.
from point
Yeah.
A to point B. It's about evolving, and it's not just suddenly you drop something and you go on to another field, another
Yeah.
expertise. It's all about evolving
Absolutely.
and how you grow. And
It became, yeah, it became A to B, B to C, C to D, D to E. I think it just becomes like every time we assume that we're done, that's when we're dead.
Mhm.
Right? Always assume that there's more choice in our life. There's more that we can achieve. And I believe, this is my bias, that entrepreneurship will get us there. Expertise is just a vehicle. Entrepreneurship is truly what gives us choice in this world.
And that word came up a couple of times, entrepreneurship and
Hmm.
entrepreneur. And
Hmm.
this is a post that I saw yesterday. Someone was asking, if you're an entrepreneur, raise your hand. And I saw a lot of people going and raising their hand.
Hmm.
So personally, I consider myself a creator, someone who
Hmm.
creates something and make the best out of it. And there at some point, if that's not what I'm aiming for, it doesn't draw my passion anymore, I'm willing to sell it or just have someone else take it over. So I'm a
Hmm.
creator in making the vision coming true. So I
Hmm.
don't consider myself entrepreneur. What's your definition of entrepreneur?
Yeah, I love that question. I will tell you, it's a bit, it might be a bit dramatic, and I apologize. But you know what? To me, the word entrepreneurship is no different than how we define God, right? Every religion, every community, every part of this world defines that God that they as a higher being of some sort. So to me, entrepreneurship is that we all have different definitions of being called creative. Is no different to me, but entrepreneurship, to the ultimate goal for me, is entrepreneurship is a way of thinking. It's a style of thinking. To define yourself as an entrepreneur, to truly believe you're an entrepreneur, you have to, I believe, you have to have a methodology of how you think. So you could be fully employed 24/7 as a security guard, but still be an entrepreneur because you have a creative way of thinking. And that includes what you just said: creative ability, ideation, critical thinking, the ability to move through fear, not necessarily ignore fear, but move through fear. I also added the definition recently of, the idea of emotional intelligence, right? Being an entrepreneur requires you to be able to deal with a plethora of different people. So being able to manage that authentically, requires emotional intelligence. So entrepreneurship to me is simply a way of thinking. Now, that being said, I do have this evolution to become an entrepreneur. I believe that when you first start as a side hustler, when you start with a hobby business, you're self-employed. It's really how the government defines you as: you're making money outside of your profession. You're simply self-employed. You are doing this for fun. You probably don't have a team. There's minimal risk. It really is just you trying out something. And often this is where we are in our ideation stage, is we're self-employed. The next component is business owner. So to evolve from self-employed to business owner, you start to take on more risk and more commitment. So whether you get a storefront, whether you get employees, ideally this now becomes your full-time venture. A business owner is simply a more committed self-employed person. That really is only the difference. They've created a job for themselves. A self-employed person's created a part-time job for themselves. A business owner's created a full-time job for themselves. But between those two, there really isn't a level of evolution, Michelle. They're really just earning money. They're selling time for money, product for money. It's very transactional. The true evolution to entrepreneur comes when you evolve your style of thinking, you evolve your mindset, you evolve into really investing into emotional intelligence, and you start asking questions. The business owner and the self-employed don't ask questions. The entrepreneur says, how can I do this better? Who can I help? How can I make this better for the people I help? That constant desire to grow, develop, become more, evolve, that's when you've hit that level of entrepreneurship. Because in your mind, the way you think is, how can I improve this? How can I do better? And that doesn't just happen in entrepreneurship. That style of thinking comes into raising children, dating, shopping at the grocery store, right? You always think, how can I make this better? So those people we make fun of who say, how can I make my shopping trip more efficient? They have seeds of entrepreneurship in there. And that to me is what entrepreneurship truly is. It's that idea of evolution, that you ask questions, that you continuously grow and evolve from it. Expertise, again, is just a model of entrepreneurship. There are so many other ways to get there. expertise is my chosen methodology, my chosen modality of entrepreneurship. But when I see those threads, Michelle, when I see someone raise their hand and they say, I'm an entrepreneur, and then I ask a couple questions and they're not answering it, I live from a positive mindset. I was judged for so long, and for so long I judged, and now I try and live a life where I don't judge. But I'm not going to lie to you. When I see them answer those questions in a way that makes me think, I start to think, okay, if you believe it, that's fine. Then I just go over to TikTok and watch some videos. Like, what can you, right? You can't help people. You can't force people. You can only help those who wish to evolve. So that's me. So the reason why I say this here on your show, why I want to say it out loud, is I want people to hear what I'm saying who don't think they're an entrepreneur. That's huge, Michelle. There are so many people in our world who think they're different, who think they're wrong, who think they're bad, because they think like you and I think, because they have this idea of constantly asking evolutionary questions. They think they're wrong. And I want them to know, this is my mission, my vision, is to know you're not wrong, you're an entrepreneur.
And those who are struggling to understanding and believing they're entrepreneur, they can come and talk to me because I work with self-talkers.
Right. Oh, you're absolutely right. You know what I mean? You're absolutely right. You're a prime example of that for sure.
So let's talk about the expert, because then how do you someone who jump on and say, you know what, I'm an entrepreneur and I would like to own a business. I actually like to create a job for myself. Mm-hmm. How do I market? I think a lot of people are struggling, and I know a lot of coaches who just came out of their program. They're struggling to put out the message, and they call it a niche, right?
Yeah. Like, in Canada, we call it a niche, but yeah.
A niche.
Yeah. Niche. Americans always say niche. We say niche, but it doesn't matter.
And it's about the message that you want to, like, who are you serving with what? And that's your expertise. How do we get someone to that point where they're really clear, more clear, having clarity around what their niche is?
I love that. I love that question too. That's great. I think, or I know I can tell you that most expertise simply comes from life experience. So granted, there are those of us, as I said earlier, who will attend school for 5 or 10 years building a skill. And that's important. I think having a skill is great, but that doesn't necessarily make you an expert. What makes you an expert is life experience. And so by that I mean, and by the way, life experience can come when you're 20 or when you're 50. I've met 20-year-olds who have lived way more life than I did when I was 35. So it really becomes around, what is it in your world what is it about you that you're passionate? What makes you excited? What do you love? What energizes you? Where do you feel like you can, and I said this before we started recording, what can you constantly talk on nonstop? And the idea here around expertise is there's always a market for that expertise. There is a market for everything. When people say, Bob, I know everything about bees, but who gives a crap about bees? There's always a market for everything. And if anything, TED Talks have shown that. There's always a market for anything. So the idea is, first of all, understand what it is that you really love and what you really do. Then, so here's how I do it. Write it on a piece of paper, 3 columns. What do I love to do? The second column is, what have I done in my life? We forget to celebrate the things that we've achieved. In Canada especially, we suffer from this disease called humility, and we don't acknowledge the amazing things we've done in our life. I attribute this a lot to stay-at-home moms and single moms. And they think, well, I was just a stay-at-home mom. There are CEOs that can't run businesses as effectively as some stay-at-home moms that I've seen. So really understand, what have you done over the last 15 years, 20 years? What have you spent time doing? I don't care if you worked at a McDonald's. All of those things you've done, those skills you've done, those things you've had to learn, write that down in column 2. And column 3 is simply matching those 2 things. So when you think about what you love to do and what you've done in the past that you've enjoyed to do, you want to match 2 things align. And then in column 3, when you put it there, now you're simply looking for a market for that. So you figured out what you love to do and what you've done before, or, have really enjoyed doing. Now you're simply looking for a market. Who wants to know more about raising bees in cold climates, right? Who wants to know more about raising kids on a shoestring budget? Who wants to know more about being a single dad and not a toxic masculine person? They're all there. And when you do that preliminary market research, which could be talking to people, looking in Facebook groups, heck, you could even do a Google search. That's a really great way to hone out your expertise. So when I hear coaches say, I'm a business coach or I'm a life coach, that's great, but that's not your expertise. That's just the trade. That's the skill. That's no different than using a screwdriver or a drill, right? The idea is your expertise is making the actual whole effectively. And so that's how people need to draw out their expertise and figure out, once they understand what market wants that, that's what they can monetize. That's what they can build on. And Michelle, in 2020, there are so many ways of building that out. Speaking, podcasting, blogs, courses, coaching. There are so many different ways of bringing that out. But that's all expertise is. That's the key, Michelle. And to your point, the next step, once you figure that, the next step is to niche. So I've told you I'm an expert in being a single dad, learning to grow a life without toxic masculinity. That's great. But talk to me more about that. Who needs that? Where are those people, right? Are these single dads who have a lot of money, or single dads who are dead broke? Are these single dads who are really effeminate, or single dads that grew up on a farm and love lumberjacking, right? You niching down is really getting into this idea of understanding who you're going to help. And when you focus on that market, and this is where people get scared, Michelle, well, I can't just focus on one market. When you focus on that one market and you look at the population of the world, a world with internet, there will never not be a market for you, right? If you charge 1K and only got 10 people, you were making 10K a month, depending on your level of standard of living, that's okay. 10K is not bad. Granted, there are some expenses and taxes and such, but 10K is not bad.
You charge higher with your expertise, right?
Yeah, well, ideally when you're starting out, it's a rotating value ladder, right? You start maybe at $1,000, and then maybe get to 2 or 3. Yeah, absolutely. But to your question, expertise isn't the technical skill. Expertise is not about the drill. It's about how do you use the drill to make that hole. So it no longer are business coaches you're not an expert as a business coach. You're not an expert as a life coach. You're not an expert as a tennis coach. That doesn't work anymore. Your expertise is, I'm a business coach that works with Main Street businesses, brick and mortar, that don't know how to bring people in using social media. Your expertise is, I'm a life coach that helps women understand that negative self-talk holds them back from living the life that they want to live, right?
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful. You were cutting out a little bit, the last portion. It's muted.
There we go. It's back.
There we go.
Sorry. I don't know what
That's
happened
okay.
there. Okay. Yeah, that was my rant.
I love it. I love it. I think it really helped a lot of people to go back to really talk about, and what comes up for me is the story about yourself. Like, how do you evolve through your story, and what now you're here? How did you do it, and what can you do to help others?
Yeah. And you're amazing for that, your skill set, because when I hear people say that, this is where they hit their first barrier. I can't do that because, and this is where someone, by the way, audience, this is where someone like Michelle comes in. Please make sure you take her information. The idea here is, when you hit that barrier, you need to work through that. And that's where experts like you come in. Professional women who want to grow in their career, but feel like they can't because of negative stuff. Like that's a huge thing to overcome.
Yeah. We have about 3 minutes left.
Sure.
I'm really curious. So who is your client now? Who's your avatar? They call it avatar, right?
Yes. Yeah. There's so many words for it.
Who's your avatar?
Who I want to give me money.
Yes.
Yes. So my ideal client profile, it's evolved. And I think right now my focus has been on working with service-based professional entrepreneurs. So accountants, lawyers, chiropractors. Michelle, they're the biggest ones suffering from lack of knowledge and lack of expertise. And I don't mean they don't have it. I mean, they don't know how to evaluate it. And so I meet so many practitioners who get into their practice, an accountant, for example, and they're like, Bob, I have a lot of clients, but I'm always busy. I never have time. I'm making money, but I hate some of my clients. And the idea here is, well, if you really niche into what your expertise is as an accountant, what's that community, that ideal client avatar you serve, and you really build that out, and that translates into your practice, you'll get more time, you'll actually get more revenue, and you'll actually be able to grow and evolve a business that you could actually later sell, because then it has its own entity. So that's really who I work with, is who are these service providers that work day to day on a technical skill, accountants, doctors, lawyers, chiro, that they're in the hamster wheel. They're like, Bob, I don't see a way out of this until I retire at 65 or I'm dead.
Where people don't even realize that they needed your help, because they're just going in circle, and they have a lot of clients, and they're just getting burned out all the time, right? Because
they don't realize there's a better way. Yeah, they don't realize there's a better way. They don't realize there's another way that they could do what it is that they want to do. Because A, no one's told them, or B, where you come in, they just in their head think, nobody would pay for me to talk on a stage. That's what my goal is to help them understand how to overcome and pursue that.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
I have two places I like to play. The first one is please find me on my website, bobminhas.ca. That's how we do it in Canada. And LinkedIn is where I like to try and spend most of my time. So if you search Bob Minhas on LinkedIn, please reach out. Please in the note say how you found me on Michelle's podcast. And I'm happy to, if you tell me on LinkedIn that you found me on Michelle's podcast, I will happily give you 30 free minutes just to talk about what it is you need to talk about with regards to your expertise.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a one-time
offer.
one-time deal.
You got to know Michelle.
Like, exactly.
You got to know Michelle.
I will have those linked in my episode notes. So,
perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Michelle, for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching Live Coffee Talk Show. I air every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Pacific time. So if you'd like to become a patron, you can find me on patreon.com/Michelle Quay. And I will also have that in the episode note. See you next week. Bye, Bob.
Bye.